I'm from marketing, and I'm here to help. If you remember that. So as I was saying, I probably should have coordinated with people who do marketing at the CF Foundation before I gave some free advice. But I was also thinking, I don't usually talk about the talk at the talk. I was thinking earlier today, I didn't really think this talk was going to be accepted. So we'll see how that goes. But then I was realizing my quandary of like I should have coordinated with people that I guess if you accept a talk, then you've been invited to give one. So here I am going over what we have here. So yes, I like I said, I do work in marketing, and as I said this morning, I've been around whatever this community for a long time, and I don't know. Here's my thoughts on some marketing stuff we, you, us could do for a happier life. We'll see. A lot of it is theoretic, as my coworkers know. I like to put a lot of ideas out there and see which one survives next time I'm talking. We'll see how this one works out. So I want to lay out, whenever you do some marketing consultation, you got to start with the landscape. What's going on out there, the opportunities, things like that. And I talked a little bit about them this morning, and there's been many mentions of them today. So I'll look at that. And then, I don't know, we'll go to like some kind of shifts or let's say improvements in marketing think that I think would be well. So let's start off with the opportunities that are there. And I'll just briefly go through these. But these are things everyone knows and encounters, but I think what I want to show is some proof. And since I used to be an analyst, proof means charts, right? And that's pretty much what you get with proof. And the great thing about charts, for those people who haven't seen me give a talk with charts before, what I like to say is they tell you in presentation school that you should not have a bunch of little text or a bunch of busy things on your slides. I think they call those eye charts. People always apologize for them. But here's a magic thing. Like I said, I'm from marketing, so you think about these things. Is if you have a lot of confusing stuff on a slide that people can't read, you get to interpret it for them. And you've got this authoritative thing back there, and they're like, I don't know, there's a chart, and it's got footnotes, so it must be right. And so I'm going to demonstrate that right now. So this is from IDC. Now, they do a great job collecting together. This is an industry analyst firm, if you don't know who they are. They're okay. You don't have to get upset about it. But every few years, they do this thing called a cloud pulse, where they ask organizations, they survey and do estimates. I know a lot of these IDC people, they're fine. They're not just making stuff up. And they ask them all sorts of things. The one that I really like is this one. And they're asking them, where are, to show a little bit of my age, the workloads? Where are you running the applications? And you read a lot of news, well, I do, maybe you do, and the way that this question is usually covered, where are things running, is by revenue, right? It's not covered by actual units or the applications that are out there. So what I'm interested in when it comes to this question of where are the workloads running between public cloud, private cloud, basements, I don't think that's a category that they ask very much about. Maybe we'll write in and suggest that. I'm interested in the actual applications that are running, because I know the public cloud companies are making tons of money, and I roughly know how much the rest of us are making. Money's fine, I love it, it's good stuff. But when it comes to decisions about how you're going to architect things, how you're going to think through them, the people using the stuff, it's important to pay attention to the things that are running. So anyways, that's a long way of going about. There's this question of where are the workloads running, right? Because that's what we, as a platform runner, hopefully you're running applications. You don't just have a wonderful UI or a blinking cursor. So you got to know where they are so that you know where to run the platform. And if you look at this in a whole bunch there's all sorts of charts you can look at. Here's another fun one. I did a little bit of math there for you. Everyone's always very public cloud enamored, so they only look at that and they leave off the other one. So I thought if only for my own reference, I try not to do math in public, I could look at that. But this is the other extreme end, right? So and there's several other things, but if you look at this one, where basically you have, as I was joking this morning, it's not private cloud. It's dedicated environment. You've got 44% of applications running in a dedicated environment, and then these folks over, I think this is a Barclays survey. They're more around 58%. You go look at other surveys. It's basically whatever it may be, relying on the precision that I learned as a philosophy major. It's like 50-50 or 40-60. I don't really know which one goes which direction, but it's somewhere in there. And the thing that's even more interesting is this has remained constant for many, many years. Like there's another great Goldman chart, or a Goldman chart, Goldman Sachs, the people who run the Apple Card but really don't want to anymore. They basically have asked CIOs for the past 15 or 20 years what their plans are to move to public cloud. And they have been saying consistently every year for the past 10 or 15 years that in 3 years, something like 80% of their applications are going to be running in public cloud. And so they're very consistent in that one prediction that they do. And it's a very nice flat line, right? So that is the first opportunity, which has always been there. But I think it's something that people are a little more aware of and thinking about is that like, hey, there's actually a lot of applications running on dedicated environments, right? Like running in this area, and we should probably figure out how to run them better or just keep running them, right? And also when, you talk to people who are trying to migrate and modernize their applications, they also, in 3 years, are going to be running 80% of them in public cloud. Very similar kind of vibe that goes through that. So this is if you happen to have a platform that runs applications that you can manage and run on your own, this is a huge opportunity to have people realize that all these applications are there and they need a platform to run. Now there's two more opportunities. One that I think is, I don't know, maybe it'll stick and be a thing, but well, first of all, let me tell you a joke. How do you know that someone's an expat? Just like a vegan, they'll tell you, right? So I live in Amsterdam, and you get this sentiment a lot more over there than you do here, and that is sovereign cloud, right? Which is to say, I would like to determine which jurisdiction I run my applications under, right? And I think the reason I point out the expat thing is I realized living over there for several years that we don't really, over here in America, we don't really think of our cloud as a sovereign cloud. We just think of it as the cloud. Whereas in the rest of the world, they're like, no, that's the American cloud, right? Like it's very much so that. And I think there's more, I don't know, I've encountered in the past few years people who are much more interested in having their own, like, not American cloud, which sounds terrible to be saying here in America. But it's more, you can be, what's the word? Empathetic, understanding that, like, I live in the Netherlands, they're great. So German, all good stuff. But you can imagine if you went to a bunch of American companies and you were like, hey, how about we run everything that you have in France? Right? They would have a similar reaction that you see on the other side of the Atlantic. So this is another opportunity that emerges more and more of like, maybe we should run our own stuff, right? Like we want to not have it running in whatever these great, fantastic clouds are, but our own cloud, our own little home that we run things. So again, what are you going to run those applications on? Like, you need a platform to run it, just as with the all of your dedicated environment. Now, the other one, which is obvious, but it's good to have a chart around it to understand it as well. And I think this was mentioned definitely this morning and several other times, is the, my theory basically, I don't think it's my theory, but the theory that whenever there's new workloads, new applications, I should stop saying workloads, that it tends to drive a whole new stack that comes with it, right? It's this window of opportunity. We've got a new application, a new initiative, this group. They're also going to need an infrastructure and a platform under it. Like those networking people never respond to their tickets. And so you're always, anytime there's a new UI, pardon the word, paradigm, you tend to see that go all the way down the stack to the infrastructure that needs to come in. So if this AI stuff pans out and people finally start doing more than like little fun POCs and things like that, and they start adding the functionality to their existing applications, then you can see that there's this window of opportunity to have a new type of infrastructure or to kind of persist with the infrastructure that they have. And there you go. Another reason people maybe want to have their own cloud so you don't have to rely on this kind of stuff happening. But let me, which this is terrible because the next slide is all about me, where I I ask you to engage with my brand. But that's okay. I've given this slide so many times I can do it from memory. Anyways, so I've worked at Pivotal at January 2015. So I've been here about 10 years. Before that, I worked as an industry analyst at places like 451 Research and RedMonk, and I was an application developer at a place called BMC Software, and then I did some online banking stuff. Whatever. I could go on, but I should move on with my small amount of time. But if you're interested, engage with my brand. You can check out all the exciting things that I do. So, hey, there you go. It works. You know what happened? I think was we just unplugged it and plugged it back in. So I was not trained as a marketer, so I have to go ask our AI friends what all these phrases mean every time I use them. So if I get them wrong, luckily there's only a few of us here, so we'll be fine if I get it wrong. But I think the major thing, as I've been thinking about this through the years, that the kind of Cloud Foundry community has in front of them that would be helpful to do is to think about the positioning that Cloud Foundry has. Now, positioning, I think of it as you go to the grocery store and you want to buy some cereal or some chips, and where have they positioned the cereal, right? Like, what is it between? What layer on the shelf is it? How do you think about it relative to the other options that you have? How are you explaining the cereal that you have? And how is its physical location telling you something about it? I don't know if you noticed this, all the cheap cereal is down here, right? And the more expensive cereal is about here, and then they cluster together the healthy cereal. All the cereal that's got little mushrooms in it, it's kind of, not mushrooms, marshmallows. I get those mixed up all the time. They're clustered together, right? So you can start to understand how positioning works. And the same thing with chips, same thing with meat. You know, the meat gets better as you go up. I don't know why lower is worse. But anyhow, so positioning is a very important thing in any sort of marketing think and endeavor. And I think what we've done, what's happened with us doing it and to us and just by the way things do is we've been sandwiched between two things. And we're thinking of ourselves as between these two things that we have instead of needing to position ourselves away, right? We're in the wrong part of the cereal shelves. And so people tend to think of us as relative to the cereal around us. I'll stop that metaphor and just get to the same thing. And I think, thankfully, there's actually a good historic way of looking at this positioning, kind of a little bit of how it works. This is kind of like I'm very much so forcing the cereal box into a position here. But it's also I think it's good to kind of reflect on this kind of history to figure out not where we are, but to kind of learn some timeless lessons about things. So I don't know if you remember OpenStack. I do, because I was involved in that a lot. I didn't mention that I worked at Dell, but I was intimately familiar with OpenStack because we were trying to build a public cloud out of it, if you remember that. And you'll notice there is not one now. There's also not an HP OpenStack-based cloud and all sorts of other ones that we're going to take over the world. He was in charge of, this is one of the best conference moments ever. As an analyst, you go to these things and you're like, I maybe would like to go to bed because I'm just going to drink too much. And then I'm going to have to sit through 3 hours of discussions about mainframes and very thrilling software the next day and pretend like I'm paying attention. That's never happened to me, but I heard other analysts talking about that. But so this was great. You go to one of these parties, and this was the guy who was in charge of the HP OpenStack cloud. And it turns out he was also a DJ. So you walk in, and there he was DJing. And I'm not making fun of it at all. I think it's great. You should go look up his stuff in SoundCloud. It's there. He's got a good brand going on. And then they accidentally, they didn't ask me if they could use a picture of me for a banner there. But, so the reason I bring this up is because OpenStack is very much infrastructure, right? And I remember this because I remember discussing with them when I was an analyst, hey, what about developers? And they would always say, that's a great idea, right? We should spin up a group to focus on developers and think a lot more about application developers. But they didn't really get the chance to get around to that. They were very much purely infrastructure, right? And then you may remember the other part of the sandwich that came along, mentioned many times, our friend Kubernetes, right? And they also similar, I don't know. It's always a weird thing to talk about. I read recently that the worst form of writing is when you're bitter about something. So I'm not being bitter, just sort of historic here, but it comes out every now and then, and I apologize. For example, if I think about its effect on a lot of the work that I did, over that 10 years or so. But hey, it's fine. But the positioning that something like Kubernetes has is infrastructure, right? Like it is, as the community says, it's a platform for building a platform. And it has an interesting story of how its positioning like went up and down and around. But I think it's really defined a lot of what Cloud Foundry is, right? There is this notion that they are competing similar things, right? It's just another cereal with marshmallows in it, or mushrooms if you're in that section of the cereal row, right? But what's important with both of these, right, is just like with OpenStack, if you look at Kubernetes, right, and you even look at, Craig used to work with us, right, and there's this sense of like, this is kind of a dog that caught the bus, bad metaphor, of like, application developers got really interested in it or something, and it kind of lost track of being infrastructure. And I think both with OpenStack and Kubernetes, it's definitely operations focused, right? It's an infrastructure cloud that you build up. And I think the whole point of this is that the Cloud Foundry world has really gotten positioned into that category, right? That it is for operations people, it's infrastructure that you're building. It definitely is that kind of stuff. But it almost feels like we've kind of lost track of the application developer role. Like we always talk about we're going to make the developers' lives easier and things like that, which is fantastic. But then we spend a lot of time talking about infrastructure, right? In the same way that when the OpenStack people, when I would ask them about developers, they'd be like, that we should get to that one day, right? Like focusing on how developers fit into this and really bringing them as sort of members of that community. So, it's fun if you haven't in a long time to go back to the original Cloud Foundry release thing. It's actually, I footnoted there, a 9-part series in YouTube there. One, it has these quaint old, you remember when slides were in the aspect ratio of TVs, old TVs? But you look through this, and especially at the beginning, and it's kind of an example of positioning around developers, right? So there are 9 parts of it, but pretty much all of it is about talking about what developers need and focusing on developers. And then it's also kind of quaint because you remember when Ruby was going to take over the world? So there's long, you got Spring Rod up there, talks about Java, and then it's just like Ruby, like really lots to talk about that. They do go into Node and other things, but the point being that when you walk through all of that, right, it's this positioning of like Cloud Foundry is for developers, right? Sure, operations people, infrastructure run it, and they are stakeholders. Perhaps, it's important. I guess you could say an analogy would be like cars are for like driving people somewhere, and the drivers are very important, and the people who manufacture the car are important, but like we should have some cup holders in here for the people who are sitting here, right? Like thinking about the people who are in the car. And as I think I bring this up because the developers, the application developers, they're usually the ones, not always, right? But they're one of the, I hesitate to say easier, possible ways of getting your infrastructure in place and widely spread, right? And as another historic example of that, if you remember these folks, they gave out, I went to one of their last big conferences in Europe, and they gave out these delightful little whales, which are fun. I got some of these some Lego stuff from Heroku recently, little people that are fun. And my daughter went and opened one, and I was starting to get upset that she was messing with my stuff. But then I realized they're Legos, that she should play with them. So that's a story for you. But what you saw with Docker, right, is because it was very easy for developers, because it was very centric to developers doing things, and is like how boring, well, here, the answer is not boring at all, but how boring could packaging up your application be, right? Like, again, very thrilling for many people here. But that's pretty much what was going on there, and it was crazy and still is crazy popular until they kind of weirded out and something happened. Always fun conversation there. But it's proof that like you bring developers in, you get them all jazzed up, as it were, and excited about things, and they can make things a lot easier as far as bringing your infrastructure in, which is definitely, I don't know if you talk with large organizations who are considering what platform to run, that's a big deal about like what the developers are into and what they're, the kind of desires that they're driving. So that kind of leads to this chain of thought, right? So developers are one of the major ways of leading platform change. Application developers, I should be always be specific. And so if you want to keep the platform that you have and also get people to move to it, to change to that, you need to pay attention to them, right? And then we've established Cloud Foundry is for developers, right? And so I think, I think Deshaun, some other people were talking about this, right? So we have a problem here is developers can't install Cloud Foundry, right? They don't all have basements and know how to, as not even Deshaun apparently is a certified VI admin. He's got to get help from someone else. And that guy can do a lot of stuff. So there's this issue, right, of like, well, how do we make it easier for developers to do things? Now, over the years, I was as great. I love seeing Deshaun's talk because I was like, someone's already touching the third rail here. And so I don't have to be the first one to do it. But, the answer to this notion over the years has been like, well, I think the best explanation I got once was like, well, did you expect installing a cloud to be easy? Which is not wrong, right? Like it is difficult to get it up and running. And then we've had all these different practices around it. Like how do we help out with the infrastructure? And DevOps is cool. And then apparently we went on to SRE. Remember that was like a kind of like a 6-month fling that we had in the world. And now we have platform engineering. And you look through the explanation of a lot of this, and it's all getting towards, we just would like developers to be able to easily use something. And for some reason, we keep going through these methodologies over and over again, kind of from the studs, if you will. So, I don't want to be prescriptive, but it seems like, at least with this chain of logic, this is a great thing about a presentation too, is you can lay out whatever chain of logic you want, delete the slides that would interfere with it. But there's definitely like a developer bootstrapping problem that exists, right? Like if you've already got it, it's cool. But how do you get developers to do it on their own without needing to like put their hand in that box and figure out what platform engineering is or talk to someone, right? So that would be a cool problem to solve. That's, what people who actually work on products love is when marketing people make suggestions about what should be in the product. So there you go. There's one. Now, moving on. The other thing that I think is worth looking at, from a marketing standpoint, you're always interested in the noise that's out there. Like, what are people talking about? Like, are we out in the conversation? And kind of in a quick assessment of that, what I looked at is I was thinking like, I read a lot of news. I don't read about Cloud Foundry that often in the news. So maybe I should suggest that we should talk about it more. And then I had the brilliant idea, I should probably just go and see what is listed on the Cloud Foundry site as far as articles. And here's a screen capture. Great piece of screen capture software that you can scroll through and capture it. But there actually is a tremendous amount of interviews, coverage, articles. There's a lot of press out there. There's been especially a lot in the past year or so. And it occurred to me that kind of what I don't see is us as a community cross-promoting that material. And I know this is difficult, because in the group that I'm in, it's difficult on its own. But there is a huge amount of chatter out there relative to the near zero I thought there was about Cloud Foundry. And so I didn't see if there was an RSS feed on this news site, but maybe we should subscribe to it and just like paste it in LinkedIn every time there's one, right? Like to kind of drive this momentum of like, there actually is a lot of conversation around it, and build that sort of thing up, right? This is one of the things in marketing that I think more technical people are like, that makes me feel really dirty. There's showers over there. You can go check them out. But like, it's super important that like people just are aware and know this thing. And the easiest way to do that is to just like copy paste stuff, right? Just to spread it out through what you have there. So this part has been going well. It's just a matter of promotion, which is difficult to do when you don't have what they call in marketing an agency. That does all of this for you, needs some coordination. So let me close out with just a few more marketing tools that would be great to sharpen up and have. That I think are, they're essential marketing tools, but it's worth thinking about. I think these two in particular would be very helpful for the Cloud Foundry community to have. The first one is getting more people talking about how it's the best thing since sliced bread, which, as we would say in the business, customer references. Now, that's a very commercial way of looking at it, customers. You could say users, if that makes you feel more comfortable. But there are many, many people, many workloads actually running on Cloud Foundry. And, in I don't know, I should have done this ahead of time. The last 3 or so years, you don't really hear that much from them, right? Like, of course, we being at VMware Tanzu by Broadcom division, whatever we're called, we hear about them and encounter them. But I think as a whole, getting more and more of that conversation out there, getting more people just saying that they're running it, and I think more importantly, what types of applications they're running on it. Those kind of stories are really interesting. Not just that you're running it, but what are those applications? What do they do? How much of whatever part of their business or the industry that they work on, how much runs through Cloud Foundry, through the apps that are running on top of them? Because I think, I recall one story where at one organization, they had some sort of catastrophic downtime. And over there in the corner was all the stuff running on Cloud Foundry that they'd kind of forgotten about because it didn't go down, right? Like, and they only discovered then that it was fine. And so that's like kind of a curse of success that like, if you are successfully running stuff, people forget about you, right? And so that's why it's important to have a lot of people out there talking about using it, and something that we could definitely amp up some more. So part of that is also, to some extent, helping out the people running it to talk about that they're not that forgotten thing in the corner of the data center or in a very expansive basement. And I find what people struggle with infrastructure, especially infrastructure that's been running for multiple years, is explaining why it's valuable. Like, I enjoy it when things work, right? But to make kind of a crude metaphor, like the value of indoor plumbing is pretty much near zero until it stops working, right? Like, people don't really think about how awesome it is to have indoor plumbing, both going in and especially out. And so giving people the tools who are using it, the users, the customers, to have a way to express this continuously, so to speak, is something that would be great to standardize, right? Because across various Cloud Foundry ways of doing stuff, what is the, if you'll pardon another marketing phrase, what is the ROI, right? And how do we systematize that? And because otherwise you get reduced down to basically cost and like potential savings. Like, things get really weird. Like, how do you trace down, if you're running 500 applications that run these various parts of the business, how do you really correlate that to like the infrastructure running it? You make up all sorts of weird things. So why don't we make up our own weird things, right? Like, it'd be great to have a standard of tracking, like, how do you know if this is valuable or not? How do you figure out what it's doing? Which seems like a nice marketing exercise, as we would say, to go through. But as a community, I think it would be a lot more valuable than just like, as has happened over the years, various people coming up with ways of modeling that. So those are my suggestions, halfway unsolicited, as it were. If you want the slides for this talk, there they are. People love a QR code. And thanks for having me speak here. It's always a pleasure.